the family, they just have a lot of family drama. I don't know. It's like a cursed family or something. I hate to say that, but like, it's just a lot of stuff happens in that family.
It's part of being in the public eye. She's just used to being Hollywood's golden girl, and she had such thin skin that after having a couple negative things happen to her for a month, she had to blame him. She decided to blame him, and boy, did she open up a hornet's nest and learn, be careful what you wish for, because now you've got the fight you asked for and you're not winning it.
You know, at the end of the day, they're the ones who are seeking gag orders against Baldoni from releasing information, whereas his team is saying, nope, let's put out everything. Every single text message.
She fired back at The Hollywood Reporter, labeling its depiction as outrageously insulting and sexist.
Have you ever noticed how certain Hollywood stars seem almost too perfect? Like they're walking in a bubble of perpetual camera flashes, smiling fans, and glossy magazine covers? From the outside, Blake Lively was one of those untouchable figures. Every red carpet photograph shimmered with that unmistakable aura of success. The beaming grin, the designer gowns, the enviable family life with Ryan Reynolds, and the general impression that nothing could crack her composure. Yet, in a matter of months, the seemingly flawless armor she'd been polishing for years began to show more than just minor fractures. Rumors of simmering feuds on a movie set began swirling, and the typical Hollywood whisper campaign quickly escalated into a raging storm. Suddenly, headlines screamed accusations and counter-accusations, legal threats, family drama, professional, meddling, and Blake found herself on defense in a way she never could have imagined. How did it all spiral so drastically? The answer may well lie in a conflict that started behind closed doors, but soon crashed into full public view, exposing hidden grudges and unmasking a ruthless streak that many never suspected. In the early days of her stardom, people mostly knew Blake Lively from her breakout roles and iconic fashion statements. She seemed the living embodiment of modern Hollywood glamour. The perfect hair, the in-demand endorsements, and the dreamy, paparazzi-friendly relationship with Ryan. Coupled with her appearances on talk shows, where she radiated warmth and a sort of folksy humor, the formula for America's sweetheart was complete. Viewers saw pictures of her adorable kids, stories of her normal life behind the scenes, and interviews in which she'd giggle about her marriage. It became all too easy to forget that Hollywood is notoriously cutthroat. Reputation there can be as fleeting as a red carpet cameo. One day, you're the must-have star. The next, you're scouring the phone for a single call from your agent. For a while, though, no one doubted Blake's rise. She was unstoppable, or so it seemed. Then word started leaking that she was clashing with actor-director Justin Baldoni on a new project. It was whispered that she had demanded key script rewrites, insisted on new producers, and butted heads at every turn. Some chalked it up to creative passion. After all, it's not unusual for A-listers to push for their vision. But as the project wobbled under tension, rumors hinted that Blake's demands went far beyond ordinary star input. She was trying, some claimed, to steer everything from casting to final editing decisions, far more control than a typical actor would hold. No one outside the immediate circle realized how tense it had become until legal documents began trickling into the public sphere. Apparently, friction had escalated so much that attorneys were involved and hush-hush negotiations had stalled. At first, many fans instinctively sided with Blake. She had the star power, she had the track record, she had a brand of public sweetness that seemed incompatible with the idea of a behind-the-scenes manipulator. Justin Baldoni, best known for his work on Jane the Virgin and for a growing resume behind the camera, wasn't exactly a household name. Did he even stand a chance against an actress with so much public goodwill? But Hollywood drama has a way of unraveling quickly once real evidence surfaces. The first shock came when certain documents, presumably from Justin's camp, suggested that Blake was inflating or outright twisting allegations of inappropriate behavior, painting him as the aggressor in a scenario that was nowhere near that black and white. Usually, legal scuffles like these stay tucked away until they're resolved. This time, however, the confrontation spilled across tabloids, Twitter feeds, and YouTube commentary channels. The result? The perfect star was about to face a wave of skepticism she'd never experienced before.
And so despite all of the resentment, to me, at the end of the day, that's what it means to be men.
We're women, so we can just lie and cheat and steal our way in to control these big movies. I mean, how disturbing is this to you?
But we never talked about it. I was suffering. We never talked about anything. You're my dad, and I was having resentment for all the stuff we don't talk about. Is what you're doing right now. You were nervous. You texted me last night. You came here. You knew it wasn't going to be easy. We're going to talk about stuff. And you showed up anyways.
I am a huge fan of you.
Oh.
Your movies are so inspiring.
If everyone can tag Justin Baldoni to this video, it would mean the world to me.
I have been trying to reach out to you for the longest. I have everything of you.
Everything changed the day Justin's father, Sam Baldoni, decided he'd seen enough. Sam was never part of Hollywood's glitz. He was simply a dad who cared about his son. For a while, he must have believed that the allegations and countersuits would sort themselves out in some bland, behind-the-scenes settlement. When it became clear that Blake and her powerful PR machine were grabbing the narrative, Sam chose a new tactic, a simple, short social media post that rattled the entire industry. In a brief clip that spread like wildfire, Sam posted words of admiration for Justin, praising him as compassionate, respectful, and focused, while pointedly contrasting him with a world full of Blakes and Ryans. The message was cryptic enough to maintain a veneer of politeness, but laser-targeted enough that everyone knew precisely whom he was referencing. The internet erupted. By the next morning, it seemed no one was discussing anything else. Fans and onlookers tore through that post, dissecting every nuance. Had Sam exposed genuine behind-the-scenes betrayal? Was he simply defending his son from a star who had taken things too far? Or was he out of line for throwing shade at a much more famous couple? The answers varied, but the result was indisputable. Blake Lively's image took a direct hit. She found herself at the center of a social media conflagration she had not prepared for, and the usual glossy veneer she maintained online suddenly felt superficial, if not outright false. It wasn't long before the mainstream press jumped in, sensing a major story. A cover illustration from a respected industry magazine depicted Blake slingshotting a phone at Justin Baldoni, a brazen caricature that would have been unthinkable just months before. Normally, a star of Blake's stature is virtually untouchable by top-tier publications. The fact that they went ahead with that edgy depiction signaled a profound shift. Either the executives and editors no longer feared her backlash, or they'd collectively decided she was fair game. Her team, of course, retaliated, calling the art insulting and accusing the magazine of belittling real allegations of harassment. But it didn't stick. The narrative was already turning against her, fueled by a thirst for fresh revelations. People began wondering how exactly these disputes had started and why they'd grown so vicious. Then more details leaked. A constant drip of behind-the-scenes text messages and eyewitness accounts that directly contradicted Blake's claims. For example, she'd accused Justin of violating her privacy in a deeply personal moment, while the text message receipts showed she'd explicitly invited him in to rehearse, mentioning it was fine, even though she was in the middle of breastfeeding. That discrepancy alone shattered a significant portion of her credibility. If she had bent the facts about something so sensitive, what else might she have twisted? Suddenly, the old adage, receipts or it didn't happen, took center stage. Each day, new fragments of the story emerged. People discovered that Blake had supposedly barred Justin from attending the premiere of the film he'd helped produce, effectively blocking him from his own red carpet moment. Public sentiment exploded, particularly among smaller film producers and independent creators who saw such exclusion as the ultimate power grab. Even fans who adored Blake started to question whether she was orchestrating an elaborate takedown, exploiting her stardom to force Justin out of the picture so she could seize full creative control. It's one thing to have input as an actor. It's another to keep someone from stepping onto the carpet for a project they invested their heart and time into. What made this fiasco even stranger was the family dynamic behind Justin's campaign to clear his name. Instead of letting slick lawyers handle everything, Sam Baldoni's fatherly love became the moral center of the entire fiasco. In repeated posts and short videos, Sam poured out praise for his son, highlighting how he'd always respected colleagues, how he'd championed fair treatment of coworkers, and how the allegations against him didn't match the person Sam knew him to be. This raw, personal approach tugged at the public's heartstrings and placed Blake in an awkward position. Continuing the fight risked appearing like she was attacking not just Justin, but his loving, supportive father. And it didn't help that Sam's online savvy was surprisingly sharp. Each time he posted a short message or a photo, the internet devoured it. For a while, Blake tried to stick to her usual style: curated Instagram shots, a cheerful cameo at a glamorous event, some philanthropic mention about women's issues or children's charities. None of that stuck. Her comment sections erupted in demands for her to address the allegations more directly. Meanwhile, publications no longer gave her the gentle, star-friendly coverage she was used to. Journalists began subtly pushing back, asking tougher questions about how she could reconcile certain contradictions, or noting the mismatch between the seriousness of her claims and the text messages that painted a different story. Strangely enough, the two people many expected to leap to Blake's defense, Ryan Reynolds and Taylor Swift, stayed conspicuously silent. Ryan posted his usual jokes on social media, teased his own upcoming projects, and avoided any direct mention of his wife's legal drama. Taylor, arguably one of the most powerful figures in entertainment, never waded in to defend her friend. Some thought this indicated tension behind the scenes. Others argued it was a shrewd strategy to avoid a PR quagmire. Whatever the reason, it only made Blake look more isolated, especially since she had publicly referred to them as if they were her unstoppable defenders, like her personal dragons. When the dragons didn't show up to breathe fire on her opponents, fans noticed. The Me Too era has taught many in Hollywood that serious allegations of inappropriate behavior or exploitation must be taken at face value, or at least thoroughly investigated, because the cost of dismissing legitimate victims is enormous. But it also means that if evidence surfaces disproving claims, backlash can swing violently in the other direction. And that's precisely what happened to Blake. Each new batch of messages or witness testimonies suggested that she had grossly exaggerated or fabricated pieces of her story. Many who initially believed her felt betrayed, aware that false statements could erode trust in real victims. This moral whiplash fueled a storm of resentment that overshadowed the entire purpose of the original project. Nobody was talking about the film's plot or its message. Everyone was devouring the scandal that overshadowed it. Industry folks took note. Casting directors weighed whether working with Blake might invite similar controversies and negative press. Producers wondered if her presence on a set would generate the kind of chaos that disrupts production schedules and racks up costs. Suddenly, the gossip mill suggested she was rapidly losing future deals. Even her philanthropic appearances no longer shone the way they used to. Commenters on social media joked, half cruelly, half truthfully, that her trademark, America's sweetheart persona, had been replaced by Hollywood's cautionary tale. In an almost ironic twist, the person who emerged from this saga with an unexpected boost was Justin Baldoni. Before the feud, he was respected in certain circles, but mostly known among fans of his show or his directorial projects. After the EI scandal, he became a headline staple, often in a sympathetic light. People who had never followed him before discovered a guy who'd quietly tried to produce uplifting stories, who believed in thoughtful portrayals and cast collaboration. The saga painted him as someone who'd attempted to steer a film in a genuine direction, only to clash with a star who, from the evidence, seemed determined to command every detail. Combined with Sam Baldoni's heartfelt advocacy for his son, Justin's image became that of a resilient professional, calm under fire, patient enough to let each receipt speak for itself, and gracious in how he addressed the fiasco publicly. He didn't rail against Blake on social media, nor did he orchestrate paparazzi-fueled public scenes. Instead, he released measured statements whenever forced to respond, and spent the rest of his time, by all accounts, continuing to develop other projects, as well as quietly conferring with the legal team that was collecting the evidence. That composure, ironically, made him far more appealing to a wide range of industry players. At gatherings and behind-the-scenes dinners, producers who'd previously been indifferent were now curious. Would Justin be willing to pitch new concepts? Or come on board as a director or producer? Could he partner up to create something fresh and profitable? The controversy that was supposed to torpedo Justin's career instead ignited a newfound interest in him. That's the paradoxical power of a well-handled crisis. Meanwhile, for Blake, every attempt to pivot seemed to drag her back into the scandal. She posted about a new philanthropic event. Commenters asked about Justin. She shared a photo of her and Ryan at a fashion show. Followers flooded the replies, with references to Sam Baldoni's pointed remarks. It was as if the entire digital world had put a giant spotlight on her that she couldn't turn off. Whispers about tension in her marriage circulated, with some tabloids speculating that Ryan's silence indicated deeper conflicts. Others wondered if maybe he was just protecting his own brand. After all, Ryan's comedic persona and business ventures rely on broad public appeal, and wading into a messy legal fight could tarnish that. The more ominous rumor was that Ryan was furious behind closed doors, that her scandal was threatening their carefully curated public image. Of course, these were only rumors, but the swirl of negativity was relentless. Even within that swirling chaos, another odd detail emerged: hints that Blake had compared herself to Daenerys Targaryen from Game of Thrones, claiming she could rally her dragons, Ryan and Taylor, for battle. The internet found that borderline cringy, if not downright arrogant, especially given how quickly her so-called dragons seemed uninterested in fighting. It became the butt of jokes on multiple platforms, with some users mockingly editing pictures of Blake into Game of Thrones screenshots, labeling her mother of litigation. Those parody images trended, fueling even more curiosity from onlookers who'd never paid attention to her career before, but were now fascinated by the meltdown. As the conflict wore on, it wasn't just her public image that sustained damage. Blake's professional prospects seemed to take a nosedive. Rumors trickled in about at least 2 major studios backing away from deals that had been basically done, all due to fear of negative headlines. Certain fashion brands, known for featuring her in campaigns, were reportedly reconsidering future partnerships. After all, when an actress is embroiled in controversy, brand managers worry that the drama will overshadow the product. Meanwhile, Justin quietly stepped into opportunities that Blake might have previously dominated. The irony was impossible to ignore. The star who set out to shape a narrative and seize creative power had inadvertently elevated the person she was determined to marginalize. By now, observers realized we'd passed the point of no return. Whatever illusions existed around Blake Lively's sparkling reputation were gone. Public conversation revolved around whether she could stage a comeback, maybe a raw, open interview, on a major talk show or an emotional confessional in a top magazine. However, every time her team floated a redemption tactic, the online reaction was scathing. People demanded transparency, wanting to see her specifically address and explain each discredited allegation. Without that, trust seemed impossible to rebuild. On Justin's end, the feud had also taken its toll, though in a different way. He'd made it clear in the limited statements he did share that the entire experience had been deeply disappointing and, at times, hurtful. He mentioned how he'd once respected Blake as a fellow creative force in the industry, and that working with her originally seemed like an exciting collaboration. No one goes into a project expecting to face a labyrinth of legal fights and social media mudslinging. The question now was what to do with the project that had sparked all this chaos. Some viewers speculated that the final version, the one rumored to have been drastically altered by Blake, wouldn't match the original vision Justin had championed. At that point, the film was overshadowed by the scandal anyway, so its actual content felt irrelevant. But some fans still demanded to see Baldoni's cut, or at least see him credited properly. Whether that would ever happen was an open-ended mystery, overshadowed by the day-to-day drama swirling around the cast. As the weeks turned to months, Blake's legal team tried to mount new offensives, claiming deeper instances of harassment that had allegedly gone unreported until then. Yet each new claim seemed to vanish under the glare of contradictory evidence. One particularly sensitive angle involved her assertion that Justin had made cruel remarks about her postpartum body. Not only did multiple text chains show them joking amicably about workout schedules, but co-workers' statements suggested Justin had been nothing but considerate during filming breaks. That sort of direct contradiction eroded whatever credibility Blake had left. At a certain point, the controversy wasn't just about one star's missteps. It became a textbook example of how weaponizing public sympathy can backfire catastrophically when receipts go public. Even people who had admired Blake's style and career found themselves reluctant to watch her interviews or engage with her new ventures. It was as though the entire fiasco had put a harsh spotlight on the artifice behind the celebrity world, and fans felt personally let down. In Hollywood, there's a well-known cycle for scandal: denial, counterattack, emotional confession, strategic apology, quiet retreat, and eventual reemergence in a smaller project that tests audience waters. Some predicted Blake would follow this path, eventually offering a heartfelt explanation that maybe she was under extreme emotional strain or that she'd misunderstood certain situations. But that immediate wave of contrition never came. Instead, she doubled down on various claims, casting herself as the victim of a manipulative boys' club. Ordinarily, one might expect progressive voices in Hollywood to rally around such language. But in this case, the contradictory evidence was too substantial, prompting many activists to stress how crucial it is to investigate claims thoroughly rather than assume guilt. For people invested in the Me Too movement, seeing someone potentially exploit genuine activism for personal or professional gain was disheartening. As the dust continued to settle, the biggest question was whether Blake Lively could engineer a redemption arc. Hollywood history is full of surprising comebacks, stars who overcame controversies involving all manner of personal and professional disasters. Perhaps in time, if Blake steps away from the spotlight, focuses on philanthropic work, and gradually re-enters with a more humble narrative, the public might be open to forgiving, or at least forgetting. Yet the magnitude of this dispute, and the way she seemed to alienate not just co-workers but also large swaths of the press, suggests a longer, rockier path ahead. Meanwhile, Justin Baldoni keeps gaining new fans, culminating in offers for roles and production deals that are significantly bigger than what he had before. Watching him maintain composure despite the storm has become almost a new form of celebrity, currency in an industry that's grown weary of daily scandals. It's far too soon to conclude that Blake Lively is finished in Hollywood. If there's one constant in show business, it's that narratives can flip in a matter of weeks if an unexpected opportunity arises. She could land a part that brings critical acclaim, or perhaps star in a small indie film that allows audiences to see a more genuine side. Maybe she'll release a candid, in-depth interview that addresses every text message contradiction and every behind-the-scenes dispute, hoping for a measure of genuine reconciliation. Even then, the memory of how easily her public façade cracked will linger in people's minds. The once blinding spotlight that followed her every move has turned harsh and questioning. And for Hollywood watchers, her saga with Justin Baldoni will remain a potent reminder that no image is too perfect to collapse, and that aligning yourself with a carefully orchestrated saintly persona can turn on you the moment receipts hit the public domain. What remains certain is that the conflict hasn't fully played out. Legal proceedings, defamation countersuits, possible new revelations from other cast or crew members, all these elements loom in the background, and with each new drop of information, the pressure either intensifies or loosens, depending on whose side it supports. Will more text messages appear? Will another family member speak out? The entertainment world is holding its breath, waiting to see if there's yet another bombshell hidden behind the curtain. Some suspect that Blake's team might have been negotiating hush settlements, while others suggest that Justin's camp welcomes open transparency. The difference in approach, secrecy versus full exposure, may be the factor that permanently redefines both of their careers. Either way, the story has challenged the notion that star power can outmuscle everything. Blake Lively was once the sun around which lesser-known actors orbited. Now, those smaller bodies, especially Justin Baldoni, have discovered that, with the right evidence and a timely father's intervention, they can escape that gravitational pull and shine on their own. Whether this ends in a quiet settlement or an ongoing feud, one lesson stands above the rest. No matter how high your status climbs, a single well-placed truth can bring the entire facade crashing down. And that's something Hollywood, and the rest of us, won't soon forget. The only question left is whether Blake Lively's next move can reshape the narrative enough to spark a reversal of fortune, or if this very public fall from grace will define her legacy for years to come. For now, viewers everywhere are left to speculate, debate, and above all, keep watching as the drama continues to unfold. After all, in a world that adores redemption arcs yet hungers for scandal, the final act may still be waiting to stun us all.